Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the session about alternative metrics, or some people call it complementary metrics or social media metrics. And before I go into talking about these type of metrics, I actually want all of us to step back a little bit to think about what we have done so far. Okay, talking about research assessment, research impact, and how it can be different from all of the different sorts of impact that we have seen. What is those academic and non-academic impacts, and also all sorts of the direct or indirect impact. So for the non-academic one, we can easily imagine that if your research somehow changed society behavior, say for example the social norms, or maybe change the culture, or somehow your research saved some lives, or maybe saved some money because you saved some procedures so that people do not have to repeat all of these things. So these are other types of impact that your research can bring to. Okay. But when we talk about academic impact, a lot of time we have to focus on only two things, or two sides of things. One is the qualitative part, that you really take into account to read the research and to see the impact that you bring into the world. Or to look at quantitatively, to look at some measurable outcomes, to look at the indicators and metrics. And honestly, we just cannot read everything. So a lot of time we have to rely on some of these indicators to help us make decisions. So that actually leads to one very important question. What is countable? What are the things that are measurable? What are the things that we can measure as a way to show the performance or the quality or the impact of the research? And remember, we talked about a lot of outcomes or contributions of research, including maybe the teaching, mentoring, training part, or the concept part, or the things that you developed or invented, or some of the services that you provide, or maybe the grant awards that you won. So they are countable, but there are different ways that you can count them. You can count the sessions. You can count the students, but you cannot count your teaching quality. You cannot count the interactions. Okay, and again, you can count the grants or the awards that you have, the number of the awards, but you cannot really count the impact of those awards or the research that you have on that. Okay, so there are a lot of challenges in looking at these indicators. So for bibliometrics, a lot of time we focus only publications, okay? And we do not really care about, or we cannot really measure the citation context or meaning unless we really read it, okay? And it is time sensitive. So it's really not fair to a lot of younger or junior researchers who have new publications, okay? And as I've mentioned several times, it is only one of the methods or tools to measure research impact. Okay, so that actually leads to the discussions or the invention, or maybe the, not really invention, because I think it comes just naturally. Okay, the emerge of alternative or different metrics to measure all of the different things. Okay, the alternatives or the different metrics. So the definition itself actually is very vague and broad, and a lot of the time it is not widely accepted. We kind of know what it is, but we don't really know what they're measuring or what's the coverage. Okay, so basically they are indicators based on recorded events of acts. Okay. And those acts would include actually based on the technology development. So it would include like viewing, reading, saving, diffusing, mentioning, citing, reusing, modifying, a lot of other things, okay, related to scholarly documents And that, okay, document in this way is not just paper. That can be a lot of artifacts. Okay, so that would include papers, books, blog posts, data sets, code, and many other products that we may be able to invent out of a research. Or scholarly agents that would include individual researcher, university funders, journal, things like that. So you can see that it's a very broad way to monitor or to trace the activities online. Okay, so because of our reliance on these online or social media tools, that's also why people say that it can be called as like social media metrics, things like that. But it doesn't really address like what it is actually or what it measures actually. And you can see that it measures a lot of different things, from just mentioning, downloading, to all the way that you can actually recommend or doing review or give rating. So you can see the different range of activities that you can do for these kind of alternative metrics. And because it is so different, giving one single indicator would be unfair and probably useless to measure them. And that's why it is actually quite challenging to use this kind of alternative metrics to represent or to present any meaning of the specific research that we are looking at. Okay. So some of the examples I believe you're very familiar with include like Twitter, Facebook, Mendeley, at metrics.com, Figshare, YouTube personal blog, your ResearchGate, F1000, things like that. So what they can provide, of course, is that you would be able to get the number of tweets, numbers of views, downloads, saves, shares, reviews, rating, recommendations. And as I mentioned, you can see that it's a wide range of activities, from just viewing or downloading or mentioning to all the way that you have to go into very in-depth interactions of reading them, rating them, giving them recommendations, or maybe providing a discussion forum, for example, on ResearchGate. You can do that. So there are a lot of different levels of interaction or participation that you can anticipate from these activities. And we are trying to measure them by numbers. Okay? All right. So these are all of the things that we can do so far, and they may be able to capture all of the following things. For instance, the immediate attention, because it is online, okay, you can pull things out easily. Maybe there is something that is preprint, and you can put it online, put it into your personal blog, talk about it, or maybe your Facebook that is open to the public, talk about it, and that may get immediate attention. People may just like it immediately, okay? And especially for something that you create for your maybe personal blog, your own wiki, something, it shows your original content creation, okay? It also shows your outreach or knowledge translation, especially when you're talking to different groups of people, when it reaches to different types of communities outside of your academia. It also promotes some sort of public communication, engagement, education, and build a community on your own. And especially if you are the own administrator, it shows your capabilities of platform administration. So there are a lot of qualitative things it captured instead of just a number, okay? But the limitations, as I mentioned, they are so different. So they represent and measure a lot of different things. When we use indicators, we just use the numbers. So we are going to use a numbers of views, numbers of downloads, numbers of saves, numbers of discussions, numbers of a lot of different things. And a lot of the time, these numbers are aggregated together, although they may be given different ways. Okay, the numbers are aggregated together, so it's very hard to interpret what does it mean exactly. Okay. Another huge limitation is that it relies heavily on DOI or other online identifiers. meaning that the original goal was actually to see something outside of publications, but because of the focus on DOI and other online identifiers, actually, it turned out to be focused on journal articles as well. So a lot of other types of documents or artifacts are being overlooked because of this focus. Okay, another major limitation is that it depends heavily on social media platforms. Just think about your Facebook account. Okay, you may receive a lot of likes, interactions, things like that. But once somebody deletes his account, those numbers will disappear, and you will never be able to restore them. And if it is your account, you receive something, and if you deleted account, you're not going to see anything. So it means that it is something that you won't be able to really maintain it. It really depends on the users, how they maintain that. And once they delete that, your numbers are going to change forever, and you won't be able to restore it to see how exactly it has been. Okay. All right, so these are some of the major limitations when we look at those social media and the use of those different metrics. All right, so one of the major questions is, how popular are they in terms of the researchers? So they're slightly different numbers. Okay, usually it's between like 75 to 80%, but when you focus on specific disciplines, so for this one, they focus on scientists, it's about like 50%. 50% of the scientists said that they use some sort of social media to talk about their research. Okay, so this is about the researchers themselves. But how about the people who evaluate them? It's kind of like the grantees and the grantors, okay? So do the evaluators care about these social medias or these different indicators at all? Okay, it's kind of interesting. Basically, a lot of time it's being discouraged. They think that it's really too new, so they do not really want people to use that unless it is something very established. Okay, they also provide very few guidelines, even if for the people who think that these different metrics can be important. Okay, but I think there is a small game changer since 2015. Okay, a few institutions began to include social media scholarship in the review for promotion. Okay, so one major one is Mayo Clinic, and there's another one from American Sociology Association and University of Michigan, their business school. So basically they gave some sort of a statement saying that they are going to account for and include social media and digital activities in considering promotion or tenure. Okay, so they have a very broad sort of a statement pushing out. Okay, and I personally like the statement from Mayo Clinic, so I'm going to share you with that. Okay, so they say that as clinician educators, our job is not to create knowledge obscura trapped in ivory towers and only accessible to the enlightened. The knowledge we create and manage needs to impact our communities. So the way I interpret that is that they don't want to just see research as academic outcome only. They want to see the research reaching out to people outside of these academic community, to people maybe in the public, people who are in need of this kind of a research. Okay, so they want to see the impact of the communities. But again, we don't really see these kind of guidelines being put into words so that people can follow. How exactly do you want me to show my impact to the community, to the public, to the world? Okay, there are a few examples that I found. I think there are probably more internal discussions within academia right now, But these are some of the things that I can find publicly, so I would like to share with you. There's a small but growing number of universities that include alternative metrics in their tenure promotion preparing guidelines. Okay, so two of the universities that I found is University of Colorado, Denver, and the second one is Indiana University, Purdue University in Indianapolis. Okay, so these two universities have particular guidelines talking about they do want to see different metrics when reviewing the tenure promotion. Okay, so in Colorado University, what they say is that you should also highlight the impact that your publications or scholarly work have had on your field. Metrics such as the number of article citations, your Edge index, or others, such as those available at impactstories.org. For those of you who are not familiar with that, it's kind of like altmetrics.com that will give you a suite of numbers about reads, saves, downloads, tweets, things. Okay, so it's a way showing that you can include these different metrics in your package, talking about your impact. Okay, IUPUI, they have a similar statement. Okay, the nature of a public scholarship is diverse, and the evidence used to support it may differ from traditional forms of scholarship. Non-traditional dissemination outlets and alternative metrics should be acknowledged. All right, so they state very clearly that those different metrics should be considered, and you can put that into your package. Okay, so now you can see that since it's actually being discussed and being pushed in some of the academia right now, and we can see that there may be something going on in other university or academia institutions to push for that direction. And I'm personally assuming that this would be one of the directions that we are going to as well, as long as we figure out what exactly that we can measure out of these different things. Okay, all right. So as I mentioned that there is only a small portion of the university or academia institutions that have very clear guidelines about what to do with these metrics. A lot of people, the first thing came to their mind is still like, why do I have to do that? Do they really help me increase my citations? Okay. So far, for all the research done on the correlation between metric scores and those citations, what they found is that there is very low and weak correlation between these two. So how do we interpret that? One way we can say that, okay, if you have high citation count, it doesn't really mean that you will have high alternative scores, or the other way around. Okay, that's one way. The second way, probably, let me show you this quote first. I find it especially intriguing that my most downloaded paper is not my most cited work. To put it bluntly, I have no idea if these sites have any impact whatsoever on my career. I tend to doubt they do. But I enjoy knowing that my work is being discussed. So maybe we can say that the second way, or a second way to look at the low correlation is that they actually are measuring different things. For citation, right now we think that it's actually measuring the impact of the research, the citation impact, the research impact. But for these kind of alternative metrics, maybe they're actually just measuring the attention. It's being discussed. But it doesn't really mean that it's an impact or the influence. Okay? It's just the attention. So it's measuring two different things, and that's why they have low correlation, because they're different. Okay? And there may be other way to interpret that. We'll see. Okay, all right. For people who would like to know more or to use these alternative metrics in whatever way they would like to use, maybe their tenure promotion or other things, they want to know, where do I get these numbers? Okay, so you can use API, and a lot of the times you have to use API, especially for those social media platforms. Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, you can use API to get all of the data that you want, okay? You can use vendor databases like Altmetrics.com. You can get all sorts of numbers altogether over there. There are also those embedded analytics like Google Analytics. They will be able, if you give them your your account, they will be able to pull out all of these numbers for you, and then you can build up your own graphics. Okay, or maybe you can just do your own analysis. Okay, I wanted to show you an example of a faculty member who did all sorts of things on his own. Okay, Gerald Gardner is an associate professor in the University of Arkansas, and he has a very interesting YouTube talk, which I highly recommend it. Okay, and he basically used every type of social media to promote his research. So he has his own Facebook, he made it public, and basically not about his personal stuff at all, it's all about his research. Okay, he has his own Twitter account, and again, all about his research. And because he is a professor, he has to teach. He has a lot of YouTube that has to do with his teaching. And it can be just online or maybe in person that he does the recording. Okay, and because all of these things, he can easily pull out those analytics from these websites. So he has this Google Analytics to show him all of these things. He also creates his own survey to his users. Okay, and I think one of the best things is that he shared his tenure promotion package, including how he used all of these different things and the graphs in his promotion package. Okay, and his package is available in this link. All right, so if you click on that link, you'll get a lot of documents, including those with the graphs and charts and the narratives and things like that. So this is something very new and very, I would say, very different, because a lot of times when we are reading these tenure packages, we still just want to focus on the narratives and text. Even in NIH, when we look at the bio sketches, we only want to see the text. We don't want to see any graphs at all. Okay, so this is something very different from the major trends right now. But if you would like to see other example that is also more text-based, not too many of these graphs or charts or things, there's another tenure package, not really package, just a statement shared by another faculty member. Okay, so I'm just going to share with you some of the snapshots. So when this faculty member talking about invited presentations, he not only gave the title, conference title, he also talked about how many slides, how many views that he has had in the slide share. Okay. When talking about his article, he talks about the article views from the specific database. Okay. The citations, the statistics, highly accessed. That I really do not know the standard, okay, but I believe it's one of the databases that their school use, and that, so you can see that there are several different ways right now you can list your publication in your CV, okay, not just the title, not just the citation, but also the article views, if it is highly accessed, okay. He also includes a table that has to do with all of these different metrics about website, wikis, blogs, Facebook, Twitter, Flickr, YouTube. So these are some examples showing how people are using different kind of social media or different metrics to describe their research. And it also shows how people use these tools to promote their research, to make their research more visible. And in a way, it probably helps make their research more citable because people notice them more easily. Okay, we don't really know if it makes them more citable, but it's possible. Okay, so I guess my final remarks are whatever metrics you choose to pick, understand that all metrics have limitations, whether it's bibliometrics, alternative metrics, social media metrics, they all have limitations. And we really want to use a suite of metrics to describe the research. And no matter whether you're using bibliometrics or these kind of social media metrics, you still want to use quantitative scores together with qualitative assessment. Okay, and finally, when we talk about social media or these tools, they probably, okay, will make your publication more visible and in a way can be good marketing tools to probably will make your publications more citable. Okay, and this is pretty much what I would like to cover for today. Okay, so let me stop the